So for the next little while, I'm doing a Mazda project. Tammy's Mazda finally had motor issues. This thing's been burning oil for probably 10 years. I mean, really bad. Probably after every 2 fills, you have to put a liter or 2 in it. And she was driving down the road and all of a sudden the car just started running like crap and there's no compression in number 3. We've had the valve cover off and the top end all looks fine. So I'm guessing it swallowed a piston ring or something like that. But it runs like complete crap now. And we have to fix it because I spent $4 grand on all new suspension and winter tires and new coil springs. And the car's in really good shape. So we're doing a motor swap. And my solution was I found a car that had a really good running motor. And this is an automatic. The red one's a standard. I've been watching videos online about if you're doing an automatic to standard swap, you got to swap the pulley, the crank pulley. Then you got to time it. And I figured, well, if I got to do all of that, I might as well do a new clutch. And if you're timing it, you got to pull the water pump off. So I might as well do a new water pump and a new valve cover gasket. So I ordered clutch, water pump, and valve cover gasket, all from Rock Auto. I priced them out from Lordco through my account. And Lordco wanted $408 plus tax just for the clutch. I got the clutch, the water pump, and the valve cover gaskets for $360, including shipping. And I ordered the valve timing toolkit off of Amazon. But not only that, it seems we're going to get deep into Mazdas right now. This car is kind of a write-off. We're pulling the motor out. So I bought that one, and he had this one in the yard. This is an 07. The other ones are 04 and 05. That one's got full leather seats. So I bought that one. And he had another 07 that had clean papers, and this one had computer issues. So they say. They didn't know what was wrong with it. It wouldn't run. And so they used the door and the fender and the bumper for another car. So I bought this one. So now we have 4 Mazdas. So I figure I might as well have a go at this one. See if I can repair this one using the black one and everything that's around. But first we're going to do a motor swap on the red one. Get that out of the way. And then we'll have a go at what's left because we have enough parts that we can build another Mazda. So I guess we're doing imports right now because I have to have the red car going. We're down to 1 vehicle. That's what Micah does. And to think they have troubles with him at school. He cracks me up, that kid. Okay, what's the game plan here? So what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to do these videos in a couple of different parts. I'm just giving you guys a rundown on what I'm dealing with right now. Going to undo all the top end, pull the battery box. You got, cable in your fuse box. Got to come undone. There's your computer right there. Do the air box, all the fuel lines, coolant, and then we'll get to the bottom end stuff. Apparently, if you pull the crankshaft pulley off, it gives you a little more room to move the engine out of the transmission and up. A lot of guys were hammering on frames and stuff to get it out, and I don't want to do that to this car. At least I can pull this one out because this motor's toast. I can pull the pulley off, yank this thing out. It has a MagnaFlow exhaust and a cold air intake, and she doesn't want that on her car anymore. So I can use that on the car I'm going to build, and we will use all of the factory exhaust system off of this one. I actually have new hood insulation because when we were homeless, living in a camper trailer in a campground, the marmots got under here and ate that. So I can solve that issue while it's out, I'd like to clean it all up, make it look new, and we'll go from there. But there's a lot of oil coming out everywhere. So I guess, you know what? I don't know about the air conditioning. I guess I'll deal with that when I get to it, because they both have a charged AC unit, this car and that car, and they work fine. It'd be nice if I could not have to recharge them later. So I'll start pulling stuff apart. Start with that one, and I can lift it out with the hoist here. Get that one out of here. That one will give me the fender and the door for the silver one. And then we'll start on this one. So I've watched a lot of videos, and guys will just give you a quick rundown. Oh, you got to do the fuel lines, you got to do the coolant lines. And I actually haven't seen anybody talk about how much electrical's on this thing. Because you have, you know, all the plugins for your spark plugs. You have all of your injectors. There's literally everywhere. There's sensors all over this thing. Down the back side, this is all your main harness. And you're going to need a flathead screwdriver, and you're going to need a set of needle nose. And all I'm doing, because the harness is kept on by all these little plastic pieces, is I just squeeze them with my needle nose. Sorry, it's tough to do with one hand. And then I put the flathead under it and just pop them off. Sometimes you can get them with just a needle nose, but there you go, it's off. But there's a lot of plugins, and I don't know how many I'm supposed to take off. I'm just taking them all off, because every time I take one off, there's another section that it's attached to, and it just keeps leading to more. So I'll see what it looks like when I get them all off. Well, I guess you guys get to learn from my mistakes. Didn't need to undo all of that one. That was for all the injectors. But oh well. At least I won't damage anything. Not hard to put it back on. So what else don't we need to take off? All right, I'll keep plugging away at this. Got a good visual now of the coolant lines. So you have this one coming from the radiator. They're just hose clamps you can squeeze with pliers. So just take that one off. And then you got your heater hoses. That one there. This one goes to your overflow tank. And then you got that other one. I don't know where that one goes to yet. There's a whole bunch of them down there. So we'll start with these two. See where it takes us next. I might as well take this other one off just to get that big long hose out of the way. So I'm probably going to take off too much stuff, but I actually want to clean everything before it goes in anyways. So I don't mind doing that. And, you know, after I do that one too, I should have the hang of it and know where everything goes. Then I'm going to have to jack it up. Oh, one of the things I learned, but I'm going to have to jack it up to deal with the exhaust. And I watched one video where the guy took all of the brakes and suspension apart to get the axles out. And then I watched the video of a mechanic who turned the wheel all the way to the right passenger side, and he just popped the axle out like maybe that far, which was just enough for him to actually be able to put the bolt in the backside of the motor when you have to time it. And he was timing the car, or timing the motor in the car that way. So I would like to avoid taking that all apart if I can. So we'll see how that goes. So I'm just having a snoop, evaluating what I got to do, because I'm used to doing V8 rear wheel drive stuff. Not used to, you know, having axles up front. But looks like we got a few bolts around here to separate tranny from the engine. And then this mount for the axle is bolted to the side of the motor. It's got 2 bolts in it. I'm guessing they're about a 13. And then the exhaust manifold with the catalytic converter. I think it's got one right here, and there'll be a bunch which you can get on the top side. But definitely gotta get rid of this one. And you can see there's the pulley. Let's see how much. You got about 1.5 inches maybe. And if you pull that pulley off, you should have a little more. This has air conditioning, so looks like I'm going to have to crack the lines and let all the Freon out. You got a mount over here, which I've seen guys say that if you take this mount off, it gives you some more play in the transmission. And sometimes they're seized together. And I think there's a little hole here. Yeah. I'm guessing that is for torque converter bolts. Not a lot of room there. So I guess I'll start buzzing bolts off and see where it takes me. You got a heat shield here. It's 5 10mm bolts, hold it on. And the bottom one down there, I had to use a flex head socket to get to it with a shorty. And then just unplug your O2 sensor and you can feed it right off of it. And then you have access to all the bolts for the exhaust manifold. After you get the heat shield off, you are going to have a bunch of little studs here. I think there's 2 per cylinder, and they're just a 15mm nut. And once you get them all off, this one has the factory exhaust, so I think there's, including that one, there's 3 catalytic converters on this thing. So I'm going to have to remove the exhaust, which I was going to do anyway. But just to get this to release, this thing's got to be undone down there, or drop the whole exhaust and just make yourself lots of room. So that's the plan there. So up until this point, we have used 8mm, 10mm, 12mm, 13, 14, and 15mm sockets to do everything, except for the crankshaft pulley. If you're messing with that, that's 21mm. And I have most of the bolts around the transmission bell housing taken out. Right here, there's one there, right behind my finger, and that bolt won't come out far enough because there's a bracket behind it. So I either have to somehow get in there and remove the bracket, or just pull the engine out because, you know, 3/4 of it's through anyway, so I don't think it'll affect anything. And then I have another one right there. And I found these corner ones are easy to get with a 14mm ratchet wrench. This one I might have to do with an extension and a flex head socket. And then I forgot there's 2 bolts holding the header on the back side. It's got a bracket that goes underneath. And I'm probably gonna have to get this side with a ratchet wrench. The other one came out with a socket and extension. You guys actually like working on these things? Gotta admit, I sure don't. But we're getting there. We're getting through the ugly part. So I'm just gonna rip that one out, get that one out, and then I'll get underneath and try and tackle that torque converter. See how that goes. So I just pulled the starter off, and I didn't really want to film it because I was fighting with it, but you basically have a stud like this going through top and bottom, and then this little bracket sits over top, and it's a 14mm on the bottom, and then there'll be a nut on top for the bracket that's a 12mm. And I just undid the wires because I need the room, because if you want to get the torque converter bolts, you have to remove the starter so that you can access the bolts right here. So that's my last one. There's 4. What I've been doing is the torque converter bolts are a 14. I use a flathead screwdriver and a magnet, and then I have my ratchet with a 21mm on the crank pulley just for turning the motor over when I want to get the next bolt. So I take my flathead screwdriver and I wedge it in here, and that way when I put my 14mm on that bolt and push upwards, it stops everything from turning. So that's the last bolt. And then I think I'm going to remove this pulley after I think I'm going to set the top dead center before I pull this thing out. I forgot to mention, the reason I use a magnet is when I put the socket on there, and it's actually a nut because there's a stud facing through, and you'll just spin the nut off. And I put the magnet at the end of the socket so it catches the nut before it falls in the hole. But either this thing has only 3 in it. I was reading online they have 4. But I've only pulled 3 nuts on it, and it turns out there isn't a 4th. So I'm either missing one or this one only has 3. We'll find out when we pull this motor out, though. We're getting dangerously close to pulling it out now. One of the things I'm going to do to try and make my life a little better later is before I remove the crank pulley, I'll bring number 1 piston up to top dead center. So I got all the plugs removed, and I'll just manually turn it till that one and that one are all the way up. But let's see if I can get it out. I noticed I was pulling the plugs out. See that plug? That tells me that the valve cover gasket's leaking in that hole, which is really common in these. I've done the valve cover gasket on the red one 5 times. And those little O-rings in the middle just leak oil down into the spark plug holes like that. Because you can see it's all over the top. And then it starts to foul that hole. And that's why I ordered a new one from Rock Auto already. So I have the pulley off, and I dropped the AC unit. It was just 4 studs. I think they were 12 mils. And I didn't have to disconnect the lines. And I forgot I have the bottom rad hose to undo. And I think we are ready to come out, which I probably missed a few wires or something we'll deal with as it's coming out. But being this is an automatic, I was not able to put it in neutral. I think they need power to go into neutral. So thankfully I can just move the crane outside. We'll yank it out there and see what happens. Well, going good so far. There was those 2 bolts right there going that way that I had missed. And just so you can see how much room you have there. And this is with the crank pulley off. And that's it. That's all the room you have. So taking the crank pulley off is a wise idea. And obviously you can get this motor out from the top. You don't have to drop all the suspension. You don't have to drop it out the bottom. I've seen so many guys on the forum say, oh, take the engine and transmission out together. It's easier. It's not. It's just going to be a lot easier to do this, and I don't have to deal with the axles and the suspension and all that crap. So I'll keep jacking her up, see what I missed. I missed the alternator wire, which goes down to your main harness. Does not come with the motor. Well, it is out of the hole. Now let's see. I always find it's helpful. There's 2 of the nuts that I missed. So there's 4 on the torque converter. This one was missing 1. So obviously this thing's been apart before. And I always find it's helpful when the engine's out so you guys can actually see where all the bolts are. You got 1 here, 1 here, 1 here going that way. And then the rest, there's 1 there, 1 there, 1 there, another 1 down there, 1 there, going the opposite way. Then you have these 2 are for the exhaust manifold bracket. These 3 are for that bracket that holds the axle. What do we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It looks like 7 studs holding the exhaust manifold up top. Those are 15 mil. Crank pulley, you got 2 bolts here. I took the nuts off there. Apparently these mounts tend to fail a lot according to videos. There's where your wire is for your alternator. You got sensors everywhere. All of these hoses from whatever this mechanism. I don't know what this is, but it's full of coolant. But any of the hoses that go to that do need to be disconnected. And I found a lot of this stuff is brittle, like the wiring harness. So I'm actually going to swap the wiring harness off of that motor. Seeing how that car is all oily, everything should come apart real nice and easy. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a playlist. So if you guys go to the playlist, there'll be a Mazda repair playlist of videos I found that helped me do this. There's a video on timing it that I'll throw there that I found really helpful. And what I will do next for a video on this is because we're doing automatic to standard conversion. We have to swap the pulley from the standard car to the automatic motor. Apparently there's a bearing has to go here, but when I pull the standard one out, we'll be able to compare and see what the differences are. Some guys have gone on about you got to change solenoids, you got to change wiring harnesses, and then I found guys that said no, it works just fine this way. So we're going to try it without all that crap. Just the pulley and the bearing, and see how it goes. So that's it for video number 1. We got the motor out.